Good morning, everyone. Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with my update from our council meeting on Monday, April 17th, 2023. It was a very long meeting. We had a lot of stuff, a lot of discussion, but the update won't be that as long. That's why you watch the updates, right? Because it's faster than the meeting. Just big stuff from the Thursday town tidbits. One, most people already know this, we've started up yard waste collection again. So you can make sure you get your yard waste out in your blue containers or your own private container if you have it. And they'll be coming around on the scheduled days. You can find that schedule online. And if you don't have a yard waste container, you can go on the town website to find how to get one, and then we'll get our Public Works folks to drop one off. We've already filled ours last week, and it's full to be picked up today. And it is spring cleanup is ongoing. So if you have those large items that aren't normally able to be picked up in the garbage, regular garbage collection, and you don't have the ability to, over the course of the year, to take them into your the transfer station, this is the week that you can get those out on the curb. And our guys will be coming around in our white tipper truck, or maybe even some of our pickup trucks. They'll be loading all of that stuff. So get it out there. It may not be picked up the day you put it out. It may take a day or 2 days, but for the next 2 weeks, our guys are going to be doing the spring cleanup. So make sure you get everything out there that you can, that you don't need to have. I have a couple of things that I'll be putting out, and I've seen that my neighbors have already put some stuff out, which is great. Take advantage of it, and yeah, you've got 2 weeks, so get it done. Other updates. Big thing obviously coming up is the election Tuesday the 25th. At Town Hall, voting is open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can head down and cast your vote there's 3 different candidates depending on where you live in town. Everybody can vote for at least 2 of them, the mayoral election and the at-large seat. And then if you're in District 2, you can go and vote for your District 2 seat. So that's a new one, a new district. Other things coming up on the 22nd, so this Saturday, there is going to be, I've mentioned this, a dedication for a statue for former Mayor George C. Wright Jr. That is 11 a.m. on Saturday at Town Hall. If you've been past Town Hall, you've seen a lot of the preps and the landscaping that's been going in for this statue. Come down 11 a.m. on Saturday and check that out. And then there's a reception at Ashbury Methodist Church afterwards. A couple of other things this weekend. On Sunday, the Arbor Day celebration is going to be out at 4 p.m. out at the Public Works building. There's a tree dedication in honor of Kathy Shaner and Donald Shaner. And immediately following that is the Red Sand Project. I've mentioned this. It's an effort to sort of raise awareness about human trafficking in our community. That will be also Sunday out at the Artisan Drive, the town Public Works location. We'll be doing that event there. So try and come out and join us for those if you're able to. And then, of course, the big one, Smyrna at Night, is coming. I think most people have seen that we've put up a bunch of I say we. Really, this is the chief and his team and the town staff have been doing a great job of starting to get the promotion out for this. So the bands have been announced. Final details are being made. And we will be kicking off, so May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, is actually also kicking off our Smyrna at Night First Friday concert series. These are downtown. They take place basically between Four Corners and South Street on Main Street downtown. And there's music. I believe it runs 5 to 7, right around that. There's booze that'll be out there. I think we'll try and be out there from Painted Stave. I think Blue Whirl is also scheduled to be out, and maybe even Brickworks is scheduled to be out one of those nights. All of the proceeds from any of the alcohol sales and things like that go to support, I believe, the Historical Society. So that's coming. Get out there for First Fridays and enjoy those. They're wonderful because we can walk to them from our house, and the kids love it. So they'll head over and try and get as much banana pudding as they can from Guzzy Q's. As far as the agenda items last night, we did have a public hearing to talk about some rezoning pieces. I'll mention those quickly as we get into the agenda. People kept their updates pretty short because we knew we had such a long agenda. So mostly it was just upcoming meetings that people wanted to remind folks about. So moving into the actual agenda items, at our last meeting, I discussed that we needed to approve the assessment list because that needs to officially be posted and give people a chance to sort of challenge their assessment or come in and speak to it. We have to impanel a board. There's 3 members of council, myself, Councilwoman Gott, and Councilwoman Forbes are all going to be the panel. We'll take appeals to that. That'll be before our May 15th meeting. So this will be posted up pretty soon, this assessment list. Really, this is just the town's assessed values of every property that we use to collect taxes. Most folks don't change from year to year, really, unless there's a reassessment done, unless you've done something like do an addition onto your house or make some sort of a change that required permits. That triggers a reassessment. For a lot of them, they're actually new properties because if something got built in the last year, then obviously there's a new assessment that's assigned to it. So we have to approve that. There's exemptions to it, things for municipalities, counties, schools. We have exemptions for senior citizens that have limited incomes, things like that, state properties. So we have to approve all of those exemption lists as well and actually make the final motion or the procedural posting for all this. So that was first thing that we got done. We did have another discussion regarding our operating and capital budget, specifically the operating budget. So this was in our budget that we approved in December. It included an allocation in the budget for $250,000 for the Smyrna Downtown, the Smyrna Redevelopment Association. The Redevelopment Association was created about 10 years ago to try and tackle blight or problematic properties in the downtown. The downtown is fairly broadly defined. There's actually a redevelopment area. It includes most of downtown. It also includes a good bit of properties on the eastern side of Route 13. For years, that RDA has been funded really only by vacant property fees, which amounts to anywhere, but I think on a high year maybe it's $30,000, a low year maybe significantly less than that. Those vacant property fees have flowed over to them, and they've basically used those fees to make some small facade improvement grants for people who are doing improvements to their property. This is the first time they've come to the town council this last year, and they put in a request for a significant amount of money with the intention of trying to begin to do some of the other things that they're able to do, which is purchase properties, make significant investments in properties to try and remove them from our vacant property list or blighted properties. Ideally, they want to work with the owner of those properties to make those improvements, but in some cases it might make sense to try and purchase the property and ultimately make those improvements ourselves, or I say ourselves, the RDA, and ultimately then put that property back on the market. They've never had the money to be able to do that before because it's never, in the 10 years, they've never been funded in that way. So they came with a request last year. We put $250,000 in it. There was some pushback as to that amount, knowing that we have some budget issues for this year. So there was an effort by some of the council members to reduce that amount. We had a debate about that a couple of weeks ago at our finance workshop. And again, last night, in the end, a decision was made that we could lower that amount to $150,000. It would still give the RDA the ability to take on some larger projects, or maybe a larger project, and put a little bit more money into the operating budget or the flexible operating budget for the town. It wasn't a unanimous decision. There's certainly folks who feel very differently from one way or the other, from we should be giving them no funding to we should be giving them as much funding as we can. Personally, I think that in 10 years, we've not gotten anything out of this organization because we've never funded it appropriately. And if we want to make changes in this community, we want to remove some of this blight, we have to be willing to put our money where our mouth is. There's never a good time to allocate additional funding. In the last 10 years, there hasn't been, and I'm sure in the next 10 years, there's never going to be a day when we just have plenty of extra money that we want to utilize. But to me, the reality is that we need to begin making an effort, because we as a city are going to be the ones that help stir reinvestment in our downtown. There are a lot of economic factors that make it more difficult and less attractive for your typical developers or redevelopers to put their money into downtowns. And we need to step up and do what we can to try and encourage that. So I advocated to keep as much money in the budget for it as possible. Ultimately, my proposal was $150,000, and 4 members of council agreed with that. So the budget amount was reduced from 250 to 150,000. And I'd just like to thank Rick Horsey for coming out. Sharon Wright was there, and Dave Thomas was there, members of this, to support this effort. That was the budget request, or the budget conversation. In the new business side, we had an updated presentation from the Duck Creek Regional Library to walk us through some of the design things that they've been doing. They're still finalizing the final design pieces for the building and the location, and to bring us up to date on the public outreach that they've conducted over the last couple of months regarding the creation of the library tax district. What this is in Kent County, since the 60s apparently, or 70s, has had the ability to create library tax districts where the county can collect a library tax, and ultimately use that library tax to support a library within those districts. If you do not live in one of 3 municipalities right now, Harrington, Smyrna, or Dover, everyone pays everyone else pays the library tax in Kent County, and that library tax goes to support the Kent County Public Library down in Dover. Obviously, that's a little bit tricky, in that we want as much of our funds to be supporting people in our area. Not a lot of people are driving down to Dover to go to the Kent County Public Library, and they honestly don't do a lot of programs up in our area. So Smyrna has had its own library for a very long time. It's a small place, 2,500 square feet. Staffing and other issues make the hours a little bit limited and the programming a little bit limited, but the effort for well more than a decade to create a new library has been underway. That proposal is roughly a 22,000 square foot library. The location for it has been set, and the last major piece that needs to fall into place, 17.2 out of about $18 million, has been raised for the project. So the last piece is the creation of this library tax district, to make sure that any funding collected from essentially the Smyrna School District, the families and businesses in the Smyrna School District, will go to support this library. That is how the ongoing operations of the library will be funded. There is certainly a little bit of concern about this. It is, for the people in the town of Smyrna, it is a new tax that the county will be collecting. If you live outside of the town of Smyrna, you've already been paying this, but the rate will increase a little bit. You can go on the Duck Creek Regional Library website and actually see exactly what you pay right now. If you're in the town of Smyrna, it's $0. If you're outside of the town of Smyrna, you can see what you're currently paying and what the new amount will be. I've run the numbers. For my house, it's $12 a year. I live in an older house downtown. My assessed value is relatively low. So I'm on the lower side of what it's going to be. $12 a year, I would pay it in a heartbeat. It cost me, $40 to take my kids to Expos for 2 hours. The idea of having a library where we can have all sorts of programs and things for my kids, as well as community programs and stuff like that. An extra $12 a year, 3 cups of coffee at Starbucks, basically. Not that I go to Starbucks all that often, maybe. But it seemed like a no-brainer for me. I know that the support from the community has been great. We've had a few people who've raised concerns about it, but the vast majority I've talked with over the last few years, hundreds of people, most of them families with kids, who are really excited that this is going to come to our community. In the end, council held a vote to draft a letter to support the creation of the library tax district. I made that motion. Council ultimately voted to support the submission of that letter to Kent County to support the creation of the library tax district. There's still steps to go on. This is still a year and a half away. We're probably 6 months away from significant construction, and another year after that until the building will actually be open. But one more step in the right direction. And thank you to all the folks from the Library Guild who have put in, quite literally a decade more or plus worth of work to try and make this happen. We moved one more step closer to that last night. A few little small things. We reappointed Dave Thomas to the Redevelopment Authority. There was some conversation about yard meter charges. So last summer, we adopted a new water and sewer fee structure. That fee structure moves us more in line with how most municipalities collect our water and sewer fees, which is that there is a customer charge assigned to a meter, which is basically a minimum payment that everybody has to make, and then you pay by consumption. So for every 1,000 gallons, you pay a certain amount of money. We had used a system where everybody paid a minimum of 3,000 gallons, and then it went up from there. When we had folks look at that system, there were a lot of users that used under 3,000 gallons that were, probably paying a little bit more than they needed to. There were some users who were paying way, way, way more than they probably ought to at the higher end, and some people in the middle who were probably either paying a little bit too little or a little bit too much because of the structure. No surprise, other municipalities have made this change because they're moving to a structure that's more fair and more realistic to cover the actual costs. The idea here is that a customer fee covers the costs of the infrastructure that the town has to develop and maintain, and then you pay for what you use. One of the issues where this has come up is around yard meters. So for a long time, yard meters were something you could purchase a yard meter from the town. That yard meter was then installed by your plumber, and you pay for what you would consume on that yard meter, but you don't pay sewer attached to it. The recommendation was that we were giving away too much with the structure we were using for yard meters, that we needed to be having a customer charge associated with those just like a regular meter, because there is infrastructure that goes into supporting yard meters. So we made the choice to implement a new fee structure. That fee structure just started, and no surprise, a lot of people who have yard meters who haven't been paying much for their yard meters or anything for their yard meters got their first bill where they had a customer charge associated with it. So council members heard about this. It raised the question. It was discussed at the utility committee meeting, and it also was discussed last night. I think there's one question about whether or not we ought to be charging everybody monthly for a yard meter, when in reality they may only be using those meters for 6 months out of the year. That's one of the proposals that was kicked around. Maybe this usage charge ought to be for April through October sort of thing versus the entire year when most people aren't using a yard meter. It's going to go back to the utility committee. It's going to come back again because in the end, this fee structure was created to support our infrastructure. Without the funds associated with it, we can't fund and support the maintenance and improvements that are needed for our water and sewer infrastructure in town. So not an easy one, because obviously nobody likes spending more money. In the end, from looking at all of the numbers, most people are going to be revenue neutral, but they see something different on their bill, and I think that's where they turn around and start asking. They're going to pay the same amount every month, $7.50, but over the course of a year, that adds up. It should still, in the end of the year, be equal to what they were paying before for the vast majority of folks. But the question was raised, and more discussion will be had. There was also a question that came up about trash charges for rental houses. This is one. We had an incident where somebody moved out of a rental house. They left a lot of garbage. That garbage was put outside. When the town had to come pick it up, because it was not garbage that our garbage folks were going to pick up, we billed them for it. To the tune of around $600. And the property owner was upset because they got charged that $600. It got attached as a lien to their property, and when they went to sell it, they had to pay that off. In the end, property owners are responsible for the bills associated with their property. If you have tenants who don't pay their last electric bill or their water bill, and those things are in your name, you're responsible for those. This is an instance where I think that maybe they didn't realize that. The question came up about how do we communicate that. It is established in code. It is part of the state code, and it is part of the town code when it goes to rentals. However, maybe we can do a better job communicating that so that people know that ultimately, as a landlord, you are responsible for those pieces. In the end, they will be attached to your property because you are the owner of that property. More discussion will be had on this. The person was asking for the fee to be waived, and I think we need to determine whether or not that sufficient communication was done and this person should have been knowledgeable, or whether the town dropped the ball on it, should have done a better job communicating this, and we might need to address it in some other way. So, more to come. That was the major agenda items. The last, well, those are the smaller agenda items that have more discussion. The big things, we had 3 rezoning requests last night. We've done a number of these already. These are basically to bring properties in line with the comprehensive plan. They're not controversial. So we had 3 of those last night. And we had 1 conditional use application request. So certain properties, if you want to do a certain thing with them, you have to come to council and ask. You can either, actually, there's conditional usage, which you have to come to the town, and then there's I'm blanking on it. There's another use that would go to the Board of Adjustments for a request to be able to utilize your property. In this case, is a property that wants to create an attached townhouse. They basically have 2 properties, or like a duplex. They own the property next to it. They'd like to add an attached home to that to essentially make like a little row of 3 townhouses. It is something that's allowable as long as you meet all the standards. This is in downtown, but they do need to come for a conditional use request to be able to do that. So we reviewed their plans, the discussion. Town staff recommended that we move forward with it. It is in fitting with the character of the community, and so ultimately the council voted to approve this conditional use application for this additional residential unit that's going to be built on Commerce Street. And then the last one, which was kind of neat, I think folks have probably seen construction out at the state hospital property. Right now, the major construction is at the state lab, where they're building the first of a 2-phase project. They're building the attached building onto the single-story building onto the old lab. There's going to be a 3-story building built behind that. There's also 2 other projects associated with this property. The last of them, and this is one that got quite a bit of news, is a roughly 120,000 square foot new hospital for the chronically ill that's going to be built out there. The process here is before they even submit a plan, the state or any developer of a large project like this submits a concept to the town. We call this a Category A application. They basically submit a concept of what it's going to look like, what general traffic flow patterns will look like, where parking will be, the big sort of questions, to get feedback from both the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the Town Council before they dive in deeply into the much more expensive piece, which is a lot of the hardcore engineering work. So that was presented to us. The project will require some significant changes to Sunnyside Road. I don't think anybody's going to be unhappy about improvements on Sunnyside, but because there is likely to be additional traffic on Sunnyside, thinking things about the turn lanes. We talked a little bit about better bus access as more people are likely to be working there, maybe utilizing public transportation. Some of those are the major questions. There's always things about, where's landscaping going to be, how many trees. They've brought this to both the fire and the police already to get feedback on access for emergency situations and things like that. Ultimately, I think they've actually created a pretty good plan. They pre-addressed most of the questions that were raised by the town. And ultimately, we didn't have to take any action. This was our just chance to give some feedback. We'll see this 2 more times. We'll see it again as a site plan approval, and then we'll see it again for a final approval as it moves forward. So all of this stuff is supposed to be being built within the next year and a half. So there will be a lot of construction. It's almost a 2-year build project for this hospital piece alone. Sorry, not year and a half, 2.5 years. 2025-ish is when we should see most of this stuff done. But lots of stuff, more jobs, more state offices coming to town. Hopefully that helps stimulate more of the economy around that area and around our community. So, those are the big items. A little bit of a long update because there were a lot of things on our agenda last night. We didn't get home till 10 o'clock. So just a reminder, for this week and next week, large item, our spring cleanup is going on. Yard waste has started back up again. Vote April 25th, all day, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Town Hall for the municipal election. Come out and join us Saturday for the Mayor George C. Wright statue unveiling, and Sunday in Artisan Drive for the Red Sand Project and our Arbor Day celebrations. And keep Smyrna at night on your schedule. Covered a lot. If you have any questions, whatever you need, please always reach out. Hope everybody has a wonderful Tuesday. Take care.